think I've always been told that guided reading was really important, but being able to see like how the students grow individually and just how excited they are to be in a small group with the teacher was really valuable. And in the future, I just plan to start it a lot earlier.
And in the final assessment, I found that no students were below the level. So at first, it was almost everyone was on that second half where needs are not met, or barely meeting it, or partially met. So I knew that they needed this support. And then in the final assessment, I was very proud because most everyone was on the other side, and that's not just my focus class; it was all my classes. So they did benefit, after all, from technology, the collaboration tool, and also the differentiation.
And so I started this new way of teaching where I was only teaching half the class at once, and we rotated back and forth every day. And what I found was I worked really, really well for the higher level students, but not so well for the lower level students. And I also learned that students are more likely to share and willingly participate in groups that they feel comfortable with, meaning groups of their same language level. So it was amazing, the sharing and the verbal participation that was going on. I also found that it led to more equity. What I learned is that I think this is going to be my new way of teaching. I don't ever want to go back to a normal classroom where I'm sitting them in rows.
The baseline assessment was, I wanted to see how many rounds of a specific circuit that they could complete in a certain amount of time. And I would say at least half the students had significant gains. I found that a lot of students were able to connect or how to prevent these things that run in their health history. So like if someone had cancer in their family or heart disease, I'm finding that a lot of the students were able to connect with learning about cardiovascular fitness and how much of an impact that can have.
My inquiry question was, can students critically analyze different sources to form an opinion and defend it with evidence? And we were focused on the Louisiana purchase because at the time it was fairly controversial whether it was a good purchase, whether it was legal, or was it a power grab by Thomas Jefferson. And we looked at different sources, primary and secondary. So lets the students become historians, and they come up with what they think happened rather than going off of what secondary sources tell them, because it's not always correct.
What I found really early was that I kind of had expectations that I thought were really clear for the kids, but that they weren't. What I ended up doing was I used Google Presentation to create slideshows for these are your outcomes, these are the projects you're going to do, here are sentence frames, here are websites you can use, really giving all that information in one specific location. So that was one of my teaching standards, was will the students be, will they be able to do this if I give them clear outcomes? And I noticed that their writing greatly improved because they had those frames with them all the time. What I learned about myself is that, just because I'm ready to move on doesn't mean that they are. And a big focus at our school this year was PLCs, and I think that helped a lot. That was something I learned, that you don't have to do things on your own.
So that was really interesting because for first graders, explaining their thinking is kind of like, well, because. And so they had to really say, well, because this picture matches that picture and they're the same animals, I have to put it under this bar graph. A lot of these kids don't have a schema about maybe whatever particular categories I was choosing. And whichever table chose the problem, they had to solve it. But every table had to solve the question, because if that table who chose the problem answered it correctly but could not explain their answer, another table could steal. So then it put the onus on them, not on me, to explain their thinking, because they would say, oh, but da-da-da didn't explain their thinking, so they shouldn't be able to get that point. I should be able to get that point. It's really Common Core line as well because it promotes collaboration and talking about their thinking and really backing it up with evidence.
So I created a rubric that had two parts, the writing trades and conventions. We talked about what next steps they need to go up a level or to go up to the highest level, and that's when they created their goals. Goals such as for the next writing, or every time I write I will remember my period. I'll remember to capitalize the first letter of the sentence. And using these goals, they really held themselves accountable. It showed that they knew what they were missing and they knew their next steps. And a lot of the times I didn't have to tell them the next steps. They did it themselves.
And I kind of underestimated my students. So I didn't teach third point perspective. I didn't try to get them to complicate their houses. So I'm always kind of trying to find that balance between really challenging the kids and also pushing too hard, you know. And I think that I was able to find it this time, definitely by bumping up all the expectations, because the kids really stepped up.
So I started emphasizing process. So when students ask me, hey, is this correct? I would say, that's not the right question. You should ask, am I doing this correctly? And so I wanted to really focus on the fact that they should learn how to do good process and not just focus on.
So my inquiry question was about using iReady data to group my students and inform my small group instruction. I found out that it was a lot easier to group kids using iReady.
I used a lot of the data.
iReady will do,
are they meeting their goals?
I forget what they're called, profile groupings, and I guess, and that I differentiate pretty well. I think I can.
My inquiry question was, how do I create a rigorous learning environment through blended learning to meet diverse student needs? The way my blended learning works is I start a lesson whole group, about 20 to 25 minutes, and we have been using thinking maps. Having kids write the process down, and I've had them use sentence frames, and so they get to practice everything that they have written down while solving a problem.
Well, you know, I did all those differentiated centers last year with guided reading. I'm going to do it again with math this year. By doing these activities, I hit on a lot of those standards without even knowing it. And then now we're actually doing an after-school math intervention program using those games.
What would happen to student assessment scores? Basically, before and after a blended learning environment was introduced. It turned out that trying to implement the blended learning thing was a lot more difficult than for blended learning, there's a really big sense of self-efficacy and self-motivation. You have to be driven to be able to do that kind of stuff on your own.
And I spent a lot of time thinking about my academic vocabulary and how I can connect to my lesson. And the instructor was talking about exit tickets. She was saying how we can use like the small exit tickets every day after you finish the lesson, and then you can check their day-to-day understanding. And I've learned that kids need that warm-up and kids need that closure questions, you know, to follow through the lessons. Because
how can I use art as a tool to develop visual/media literacy and develop critical thinking skills around social issues? The population represented there are either dropout gang members, sex offenders, or transgender or gay. There's an artist by the name of Tatiana Fazlalizadeh, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, who created a poster series of street art called Stop Telling Women to Smile. It was based on the issue of street harassment and how women are,
big focus on our
catcalled. I think they enjoyed just.
hi, Karen. Thank you so much for your support so far, and I really appreciate you helping me out with pizza. looking forward to many more years. Thank you.
Elisa, thank you so much for all your support this year, and I really miss you at Spangler this year, so come back.
Thanks, Beverly. You've been a wonderful mentor these 2 years. I really learned a lot from you and look forward to seeing you all the time. Thanks.
Thank you, Krista. We love you. Thank you. You are the best. Bye.
Mahalo, Gerald.
Thanks for the awesome 2 years of support, Maggie.
Thanks for keeping me organized this year, James. You were a great help.
Hello, Paula. Thank you so much for your support and your guidance throughout this crazy year. I appreciate all the talks and coming over and working with me last minute on a lot of things. You're an amazing support provider, and I appreciate all that you've done.